Ubicación geográfica. Herramienta territorial sostenible. Aspectos económicos, culturales y medioambientales. Pablo Perez Akaki, Universidad Anáhuac, México. Federico Moncunill, Consejo Regulador IGP Jijona e IGP Turrón de Alicante, España. Florence Rojal, OMPI, Suiza. Moderadores. Cecilia Falconi, Puig, Abogados, Ecuador. Y Arturo Tello, Osterling, Abogados, Perú.
Hola, buenos días.
Good morning, ACIPE and the Committee on Geographical Indications would like to welcome you to this workshop, Geographical Indication as a Sustainable Territorial Tool, Economic, Cultural and Environmental Aspects. Special greetings to Florence Rojal, Federico Moncunill and Pablo Perez Akaki for the value collaboration, and Jorge Chavarro, Second Vice President of ACIPE, who kindly promoted these efforts and this possibility. When we speak about a geographical indication and denominations of origin, we are in the field of distinctive science and industrial property. But what is a feature of these modalities? Maybe the quality related to the origin and to the natural resources, human resources, and the association and the potential. So we ask ourselves, do we have the possibility of taking actions and promoting these legal figures in our countries? And the answers would be yes. We have the full capacity of responding to this and relating them to the origin, and the natural resources and the generosity and the efforts of the inhabitants who have successful projects that generate value and have a positive impact on the economic, environmental, and social aspects of a given geographical region or a locality. At the same time, these are clear examples of sustainability. In these times of COVID, many discussions have been taking place, providing positive encouragement that deserves strengthening further. International agencies, WIPO and FAO have undertaken major efforts in this direction. The guests we have today will be speaking about these modalities of industrial property from different standpoints and experiences. So we will start with Florence Rojal, whom we would like to welcome. Florence joined the WIPO in 1999. She was first the legal advisor to the Office of the Legal Counselor on Contracts and Constitutional Affairs. After, as a manager of programs at the Intellectual Property Division for Economic Development. Currently, she is a legal advisor at the Lisboa Registry, the Department on Trademarks and Geographic Indications. She's a postgraduate in intellectual property rights and also a degree from the University of Chicago. In 2009, she obtained a degree at the FFF Business School in Paris. Welcome, Florence. It is a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you very much, Cecilia. I will share my presentation.
¿La pueden ver?
Can you see my presentation? No, we cannot see it yet.
Si necesitas apoyo,
Can you see my screen?
Bueno, muy buenos días. Gracias, Cecilia, por la introducción.
Good morning. Thank you, Cecilia, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to represent WIPO at this panel on geographical indications as a tool for sustainable territorial development. We have to go through the concepts of geographical indications and sustainability to see to what extent there can be an agreement between the two concepts. When we speak about geographical indication, we refer to an indication that is used, a distinctive sign of collective use to identify a product that has specific features and specificities related to a given place of origin. At the same time, this place of origin has an entire ecosystem, natural and human resources located at the specific place, and that obviously have an influence on the quality of the product. For example, we have Kampot pepper from Cambodia. This has a specific territory. This has to do with the traditions of the local communities that give this product a specificity. Now, in terms of sustainability, this is a search for the balance between the environment, economic growth, and achieving social welfare. The concept of geographical indication has three components. There is a correlation between the product, the territory, and obviously the population. So the geographical indication can perfectly well comply or meet the objectives of sustainable development. In this case, the experience, as you can see with Kampot pepper, is the thread of my presentation. In the case of Kampot pepper, as also with other geographical indications that are successful, we have seen that the success generates an entire virtuous ecosystem for the local communities. In this case, it can have a positive economic impact, job generation, development of tourism. As with Kampot pepper, in the past, the province of Akaki, where this was produced, this type of high quality pepper was produced, did not have any tourism. But since the geographical indication became world famous, this also led to the development of tourist routes and also for restaurants. And now this has been included in the tourist routes of Cambodia. Likewise, this is a factor for social cohesion because everyone can benefit from the added value and can also generate it by a geographical indication. And this added value can then be distributed equally among the different stakeholders of the value chain, the producers, the distributors, and so on. This also leads to employment and qualifications. For example, when other elements are developed, such as tourism, so this leads to options for young people who wish to dedicate themselves not to production, but have the wish to work in the place of origin. The community creates this social cohesion and enables to maintain knowledge and traditional products, and thus preserving the local heritage in terms of the environment. The natural resources of the zone have an influence on the quality of the product. The producers are aware of the importance of natural resources and can also adopt best practices so that the traditional crops can preserve the features associated to the zone and using measures for production that are environmentally friendly. In the case of Kampot pepper, this success also responds to a good management of the geographical indication. So basically, there are 5 elements that are required for developing a geographical indication. There has to be an association that represents the different actors of the value chain. This should include the producers, the processors, and the distributors. The producers also will define the conditions, in other words, the rules of how to use this geographical indication. They have to establish control systems both internally and externally. And this is carried out by the farmers associations in order to determine compliance with the rules of use or the specifications. Then there is a quality control area, an external quality control, which is very important for exporting this product. This, of course, has to go hand in hand with a campaign to promote this geographical indication so that consumers can understand why they have to pay a higher price for a product which is unique. There are consumers that wish to have guarantees in terms of traceability and respecting the environment when purchasing a product. In the case of Campot pepper, we have seen how the cuisine has evolved, the ways in which pepper is used with traditional recipes and so on. This has yielded results, and we have seen how over the past 10 years, this geographical indication was created in 2009. 10 years later, the number of individual farmers has increased to 455. This reflects that they have a source of income, so local populations wish to continue producing this type of pepper. Also regarding price, over the past 10 years, the price of the different types of peppers has evolved. Different plant varieties have been preserved. Prices have increased threefold in most cases. So in the awareness of the importance of a geographical indication as a tool for territorial and economic development, WIPO, in cooperation with other multinational agencies, is supporting several projects in different parts of the world in order to establish, develop, and promote geographical indications locally, but have a strong impact nationally or further. Some are supporting Turrialba cheese in Costa Rica to be better positioned in the domestic market. Also campaigns to educate consumers, to inform them about the specificities of the product. In Africa, there's a new project that is quite interesting. This is a pilot project for developing and registering a geographical indication that allows complying with the objectives, the Sustainable Development Objectives of the United Nations. This is still in the process of being developed. The specifications are being discussed. And the idea is to establish audits and sustainable types of farming. We are supporting farmers who produce Campot salt, grapefruit of Cô Trung in Cambodia, also in Cape Verde and Mozambique. In the case of Cô Trung grapefruit, they developed a geographical indication in 1 year. They now have a logo and a specification mode, and now they have included the label on the products as well as having undertaken campaigns to promote this product. These are the first numbers we have. We see that, well, grapefruit already had a reputation, but we see the difference in price. It used to be sold at $50 one that is just a regular type of grapefruit, compared to the coat-trunk grapefruit is sold at 1.25 to 2.50 US dollars. But over time, we see that it is sold at $5 in the market. These trees are produced locally, and it used to be consumed only locally. But now it has extended to the rest of the country, not only to the locality. And now these are exported to other countries such as Myanmar and Thailand.
The more a product grows and is recognized, when the reputation increases, there's more risk in terms of fraud. So WIPO has an international registry system for geographical indications, and these are some examples of the registries we keep for different products. The system was installed to facilitate, through a single WIPO registry, one only fee and simultaneous protection throughout the Lisbon system. By Lisbon system, we mean the Lisbon Agreement that organized the system, and the revised form of this agreement that was adopted in 2015, that came into force in February this year. This also allows us protection in multiple markets and an automatic expansion of this protection to new members. You don't have to pay additional rates. All registries are notified if there's a new member in the system. And recently, the European Union had accession to this Geneva effort. And now we have 27 countries plus one. This was before the Brexit. So we have the 27 countries of the European Union. In the Lisbon registry, you can protect all types of products: artisanal crafts, foodstuffs, agricultural products, wines, spirits. And the last application we received was for this Kampot pepper from Cambodia, as 70% of the production is for export. So once again, they realized that given the considerable increase in the reputation of this product, which is well sought by chefs in Europe and by consumers as well, because they want high quality pepper, it's interesting for them also to enjoy the brand. Kampot is a well-known name, so they have to protect themselves against fraud. And this is also important when exporting their products and differentiating themselves in new markets. For additional information on the Lisbon system, you can visit the website. This is what I have here to show the positive impact of geographical indications. When you try, or when you set the basis for sustainable development at the territorial and national level. Thank you for your attention. And thank you, Florence. It's encouraging to listen to these examples Of course, the challenges have been enormous. These projects take a long time to really take off, and many stakeholders participate in these initiatives. I'm talking now about Latin America, and identifying our products in our countries is very important. Once we identify them, we know that work requires the participation of both public and private sectors. We see that it is possible to work together, and this is a value chain that becomes so important, and we need to choose the right methodology to ensure sustainable development. So we must thank WIPO for all these efforts that we will incorporate in the future. Now let me invite Dr. Pablo Perez Akaki. He has a doctor's degree in geography granted by the University of Mexico. He has a PhD in administration, specializing in finances by the Monterrey University. He has a master's degree in economics from the University of Mexico. He teaches at the Anáhuac University in Mexico. Before that, he was also a member of the faculty in different universities. He's a national researcher for CONACYT since 2008. He is author of several books and co-author of many publications. He's a member of the Latin American Researchers Network and participates in the Erasmus project for the networking knowledge and competences for valorization of cultural heritage, origin products, and biodiversity. Thank you, Pablo, and welcome to our workshop. Thank you, Cecilia. Good morning to you all. I'm very happy to join you. And I'm very grateful for this invitation to be part of ASIPI's activities. I will start my presentation focusing on the territorial effects and the importance of territory for the development of geographical indications in general. I will not stop now. I will share my screen with you. I will not stop to define words or expressions. I will refer to the Madrid Agreement, the Paris Convention, the Lisboa Agreement, and also the TRIPS and the geographical indications. We all know what this is all about in terms of definition. Even in Europe, there are different seals depending on the differentiated qualities of goods, and this depends on how much they relate to the territory. So I will now start my presentation saying that the place of origin is a very valuable source that provides unique advantages for companies, for producers, as they influence in the perception and valuation of final consumers of such products. In the case of pepper, pepper with a seal that was explained by Florence, and pepper from different origins. We consumers perceive the difference, so we add value to such goods. So geographical indications are a set of practices that are protected and preserved and recognized as a way to differentiate the quality of a product, as was explained by Florence, in a market where we have an immensity of products glutting the market. So we have a possibility of identifying them on their quality. These geographical indications must respond to two kind of ideas. First, to preserve the ideas, the traditions, and keep a reputation of that population, environment, and society. They also need to innovate in order to be competitive within the marketplace, where there is an infinity of other possibilities. So we need cooperative rules. Otherwise, we are tempted to stem off from the original interests of the society and the territory. Of course, the potential for those GIs comes from their strong links with the territory of origin, in particular the specificity of the resources used in the process of production. What makes them unique, different from others? Of course, that specificity is valued. These are a few examples on the agave landscapes. This is the wild landscape on the left, and the intensive production of agave on the right. And talking about specificity and how geographical indications can start to transform the territories. Probably not in the way we would like or desire. So, geographical indications are strongly related to the territorial development, which is defined as a productive transformation process, an institutional transformation process of a specific rural area in order to reduce poverty. It involves production transformation, understanding first of all that the rural area originally has agricultural goods and has a set of services and activities which are additional. But in addition, we have to think of development from the viewpoint of how we organize ourselves in order to create this transformation, how we foster this transformation bottom up from the territory, from the basic territory. So, as happens everywhere else, we have rules. But we also have ways to determine this reflection on how to transform the logic that will allow territories to be part of this development process with quality seals, always striving to improve the well-being of the growers, thus reducing poverty. So studies on geographical indication have revealed the relevance, depending on different factors, mainly communication on such products, and how important territory is when we define quality. Florence mentioned cohesion, social cohesion, and the level of organization of the different stakeholders, apart from trust creating across them. One geographical indication is a resource to empower local growers vis-a-vis future links of the marketing chain. And we want this transformation process to occur. Geographical indications are also strongly linked to sustainable development in its different dimensions by generating important transformations. But GIs can also be seen as public goods. A public good is a good or service we cannot exclude people from, because we all benefit from them. So GIs generate externalities for society and generate branch effects like in tourism, services, diversification of production. Belletti, Mariscotti, and Toussard recognize that the characteristics of public goods is based on the characteristics of the goods themselves and how entrenched they are to the territory. The socioeconomic effects between two stakeholders involved in the production, and being territorial goods, they have contagion effects or imitation effects in other goods of the same territory.
This is if certain standards and quality standards are complied with. And at the same time, if I participate in the production of other goods and services, this also has an impact on other goods provided by these actors. And also in the marketing chains, because we're aware that although these goods are produced in the territory, they need further links to reach consumers. So the set of quality standards defined by them have to be maintained throughout these chains. These are cultural goods. They are symbolic goods for society. They are public, and they are also valuable for that specific territory, for that society specifically. Now, speaking about the virtuous circle, which is this model that reflects on how important these goods are for developing the territories. Everything starts at the center with the local actors, with the local players. They have a set of local resources that are specific. Through a process of identification, they recognize that there are products related to that origin. And through this qualification process, they recognize that these are important for society. Then they can obtain a remuneration for these when they are sent to the market. And in addition to that, if they pay attention to specific environmental, social, and economic aspects, then a process of reproduction can take place. So then this virtuous circle can be maintained over a long period of time. Among the efforts carried out by the local players, there are public policies that are also very important. These public policies will guarantee compliance with certain requirements in each of these processes, and I will expand on this in a while. These are also important to promote the spill out effect to other resources, actors, and production processes. Let me expand. We have the process of identification, which has to do with the fact of a product being valuable, why it has a reputation. This has to do with recognizing the territorial link of that good. Technical scientific studies are required to identify such characteristics. So these have to be related to others. We have to have specialists that have to recognize these features of the product at the same time. This is a basis for collective organization. This is very important. This is an effort made by a territory. It's not just an effort of one business or two businesses, but of society as a whole, to give value to a specific type of good. And then, of course, this requires the support of external organizations. Then we have the qualification, the process whereby different social actors are identified in order to recognize the value of these goods associated to an origin. A clear definition is sought that should not be ambiguous, of these products, of the producers, of the regions, the processes, as well as of the quality of these goods. What are the standards of the quality we have to market? And then how are we going to measure this quality? A code of behavior is defined in order to see the quality standard we wish to have. And obviously, it is necessary to count on the participation of different stakeholders in defining these standards and set of codes in order to ensure that these can be reached, and also to guarantee reproduction by means of using the local resources in that specific territory. Remuneration is building the mechanisms in order to cover the costs and to generate the payment for those goods and services by society. One of the mechanisms, of course, is the market, to place these products in the market to make them available to society. And evidently, once again, a collective strategy is required to manage this collective good and also to obtain an added value from that marketing process. There are some values that cannot be quantified through the market in terms of money. That is why the public is so important in order to determine these values that have a quality seal identified with a given territory. And this is not only about money. Reproduction implies that the resources have to be preserved, renovated, and strengthened in order to maintain them over time. This depends on the definitions of the previous stages. It has to have fair rules for benefit distribution. And this is something that is philosophical. What is fair? What is equitable? This equitable is to maintain this process over time while guaranteeing the quality of these products for a long period of time. In other words, the environment, the landscape, the culture, the traditions, and the social mesh should not be negatively affected in this economic process. In this economic process of finding markets to sell these goods. Then the spillover effects, the branching effects to other stakeholders and players, because as they are public goods, this is also extended and expanded to other processes, resources, and this has to do with, for example, gastronomy, tourism, handcrafts, and so on. Now, what about the role of the public sector? Why does the public sector have to participate, and the authorities at the different levels? Well, first, to identify the awareness among producers and local actors on the features of the geographical indications as well as their potential. The local actors have to understand the potential of their products. In addition to that, to strengthen the knowledge of the specific local resources for those goods, to integrate environmental issues in the initiatives of the geographical indications, as well as improving the available information on that type of products with a quality seal. In terms of qualification, the public actors promote the participation of the various stakeholders so that this should not become a good dominated by a sector of the transformation chain for those goods. This should promote the participation in the definition of the standards in order to improve the knowledge on the various protection schemes, as well as offering support for those to seek to participate in this effort. In terms of remuneration, the public sector would be important to find solutions to the bottlenecks arising from the marketing of the products, to provide support to the collective commercialization initiatives, as well as promoting the recognition among the local national consumers. In terms of reproduction, the public sector plays a role to facilitate the evaluation of these processes and improving the several dimensions to incorporate over time more producers and other related stakeholders to improve value generation, to provide support to the commitment and knowledge at local level, as well as improving the distribution of the benefits produced by these resources. And of course, to seek higher levels in terms of the sustainability of these goods. Now, geographical indications have to involve different levels of government, but also take care of the biases towards industrial sectors. Sometimes there is a lack of symmetry in the participation of the various elements of the chain. We have to think of the direct and indirect effects of mechanisms of using seals on territorial quality, to be careful about being tempted to produce volume over quality or fairness. And geographical indication is a resource to empower local producers vis-a-vis other players of the commercialization chain beyond the protected region, but are nevertheless necessary to be able to take these products to the consumers. So on my behalf, this is what I wish to share with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pablo. That was very interesting. It was very interesting to listen to the virtuous circle. This virtuous circle is also reflected in the guidelines to improve the denominations of origin of the FAO. This is important to share with the public officials, and very little is known about these systems. They are already been included in successful projects, as you have already explained. This is a very important issue, that of geographical indications. So well managed can then bring about solutions to many of the problems of our people. Of course, preserving the traditions is very important. I think that after these reflections resulting from the COVID times, we have to reconsider many things. I think that maybe the modalities of intellectual property and the things we are discussing today are a solution that is important to consider for the future. For those who are following the presentations, the most recent example is that of associations to collective systems. For example, the coffee producers in Colombia have 55,000 members. So this has a multiplying effect in terms of well-being for the community in general. I would also like to comment on the importance of these generous modalities for the terroir, for the land. The landscapes are amazing, the agave producing landscape, or the coffee producing areas in Colombia, which are the ones I have been able to see. Now, frankly speaking, if we consider that these modalities also have an impact on tourism and on the gastronomy, we are together with UNESCO, with all the declarations of heritage, have access to these wonderful landscapes. So the generosity of these modalities are things to be considered in order to strengthen our societies. Thank you very much for your presentation, Pablo. We now go to the next speaker, Federico Moncunill. Thank you very much for being with us, Federico. He was born in Barcelona. He studied law at the Central University of Barcelona since the year 2000. He is current Secretary General of the agency of Turrón de Alicante and Jijona, and he now is a General Secretary of the Spanish Association of Denominations of Origin called Orígenes España since 2009. He has been a speaker in many regional seminars and also on projects related between European Union and Latin America, member of the Executive Committee of Origin, and a close friend of ACIPI. Since 2000, he is a counselor of the Agri-Food Council, Agri-India, since 2013. To date, he is a full member of the Alicante organization and the Commission on Health and Mediterranean Diet of Alicante. So we are looking forward to your presentation, Federico. You have the floor.
Thank you. I thank the organizers of ACIPI for their invitation to this presentation on geographical indications. They are very professional. Thank you, Cecilia Falconi and Arturo Tello, and my good friend Jorge Tavaro. My presentation has three parts. The first part, taking advantage of my position as Secretary General of the Spanish organization, I would like to talk about GIs in Spain. The main part is my experience over these 20 years accompanying the beginning or development of a GI or denomination of origin, and thinking that whoever is in this same process, I can share some advice that comes straight from my experience and may be useful to you. Finally, the specific case of the Turrón de Jijona and Alicante. I'll share my presentation now. Can you see it? We cannot see it, but it will come. I can see it on my own screen.
Entonces ahí no hay problema, estamos bien de tiempo, así que tranquilo, seguro lo vamos a solucionar.
¿Ahora? Vamos a ver.
Perfecto.
Bueno, a la tercera va la vencida.
Okay, now. Thank you for your patience. Let's see. The evolution of GIs in Spain is evident because we started 355 million euros in 1998, and in 2018 we are 2 billion euros in billing in terms of protected geographical indication and denomination of origin. There are 191 foodstuffs and 151 wines and spirits. the European Union has a record of all products with denomination of origin and geographic indication. The economic value of this evolution is organized on different products like ham from 34 million euros to over €1 billion, or cheese from 57 to 300. This is an evolution that keeps on growing in all cases. These are the figures going up. Then we have the crisis of 2010 and 2011. There is a stagnation, but no drop. And in recent years, the production has been soaring. Oftentimes, we believe that one denomination of origin needs to be large to be recognized, and that is not true. If it complies with the conditions set by legislation of a country, in our case, the European Union legislation, even if it's small, it has a right to be a denomination of origin. In the case of the Manchego cheese in Spain, it got to 53% of protected product. And this is a small share. These are denominations of origin which are very important for their territory. Maybe they do not have a projection as exports, but for that population, they are very important indeed. Now, there is another important thing I want to highlight. If you look at this graph, you will see that the export starts from 0 and goes up to a point when it becomes one of the most important marketing products. At present, we have a common problem in different parts of the European Union. These are Donald Trump's sanctions due to his fighting aeronautical industry, and they had the idea of punishing denominations of origins of cheese and oil. You may tell me this has nothing to do with airplanes, but they have an overcharge of 50%, which made it difficult for us to put these products in the foreign market, especially in the case of cheese, ham, and oils. Fortunately, with the Turrón de Jijona was not sanctioned, and our exports this year have been maintained. The number of operations in Latin America and south of the US have been maintained. Though fear of the pandemic is global, the volume dropped by 10% in our exports, but that is not very dramatic as an effect. Now I'll move into the core part of my presentation. If there's any lawyer accompanying this geographical indications, I would like to share with them my experience. As Pablo said before, this benefits growers and producers. When you start your work, there is something you find in all denominations of origin. They want to be recognized. They pre-exist. They are not created out of scratch. And there is pride in this belonging. The growers feel proud of their territory, their history. And you start from that point. So they feel the need to join the effort. Without the union of producers, there is no such thing as geographical indication. This coming together will allow them to improve and then obtain something that is very important, as Pablo mentioned, to preserve this cultural heritage that becomes public heritage. So it's not limited to a few. Jabugo is one example in Spain. It was private, and then the courts said this deserves denomination of origin. And in 3 years, the European Union recognized the Jabugo ham. And of course, another very important thing is sustainable development that generates wealth in rural areas. And oftentimes, and I've seen these oftentimes, it empowers women who add leadership and dynamism to activities in rural areas. Leadership at the level of product producers and also strengths of the GIs. You defend sectoral interest, you promote the product, you combat fraud, you interact with different administrations, you improve the quality of the product, you add resources for a common good. And the last point, which I value tremendously, especially today in our society that looks for sustainability and origin of products, we, denominations of origin and geographical indications, guarantee traceability and origin for the consumer, and consumers value this enormously. When a lawyer or an advisor or an authority starts working along this road to accompany the development or acknowledgement of denomination of origin or geographical indication, we find the classical reluctance. First, producers do not like audit processes. They hate paperwork and controls. We need to explain to them that all audits have an initial period, but then everything becomes more simple. Initially, you're reluctant to do that which you know very little of. But if they are accompanied and if the technicians have empathy and are proactive, they can overcome this reluctance. Because without auditing, without serious auditing, there's no real control. So this is fundamental. Second, all growers, when you tell them that you're going to develop denominations of origin, don't want to pay. That's obvious. But on the other hand, and I always repeat this, regulatory bodies need to be self-sustainable and need to have their own income. They have to generate their own income. The regulatory body must have its own sources of funding, separate from public powers. So when you accompany producers during the first 3-4 years, public bodies need to provide economic support for the initial stages. Nothing is born out of the blue. You need a gradual growth. In the European Union, there's much control, but there is a system that allows us to support for 4 years the regulatory councils that have been newly created. Producers will join this effort gradually. So these 4 years in the beginning require extra or outside funding. Another important piece of advice when you accompany the creation of these denominations of origins is the lack of trust among rural small producers. Small producers do not trust large producers. But this is due to the scheme of governance that they lack. So if we provide them with a good governance plan, the small producers will be well represented and all companies will have a right to vote. There are some regulatory councils that, depending on the volume, give a higher percentage of votes. So here, in all these situations that lead to mistrust, it is very important to look at the key role of the public administration as a custodian, because this is something that will become a public good, that it will be the possession, it will belong to all the people. So the public administration becomes the custodian. There will be inspections, there will be sanctions in different avenues. So the administration will control. And there is another very important point, and that is the role of accompanying. So a regulatory council must have voice, but maybe not vote. because technicians working for administrations will sometimes act as arbiters in different disputes that may come up. And you have producers that compete among themselves, which is a quite complex situation. In an administration council of a company, some people will be in favor of one company. And in a regulatory council, if you have 10 people participating, they represent 10 different companies that compete in the marketplace. So over 20 years, I have participated in such situations, and the administration can play the role of a referee or someone that accompanies, as I call it. It is very important then to have a regulatory council. The regulatory council controls, but as Pablo said, it allows the empowerment of growers and farmers. In Latin America, last year, I was visiting some of such councils that were not very efficient, and they need to explain things to the producers. They need to empower themselves and really control their own denomination of origin. And they can only achieve this if they have ownership of these councils through production, by avoiding fraud, by being interlocutors with the administration, and so on.
Bueno,
The legal nature might vary, but mostly these are public corporations. They have a democratic base. It is mandatory to be a member of this. And there was an issue that the colleagues from Peru solved very well, because the legislation didn't force the businesses to be part of the denomination of origin in order to market the product as denomination of origin. This only favored producers dropping out, because if they can use this without going through audits and without having to contribute, this is a contradiction. But this was overcome some years ago, and things are now as they should be. It should be mandatory to belong to the organization. These are guided by representatives selected by the producers, and there's a representative of them in the board. They have the capacity that are delegated for the purpose of inspection and sanctioning. These are farmers from Rioja. Some are bigger and others are smaller producers, but they define the objectives and the work. The regulating council has a general assembly, the board and the permanent committee. There are some bodies such as presidency, the general director, and the secretariat. But when you embark on a denomination of origin, the role of the president is very important. The president has to have a certain generosity and leadership, and the director has to be someone who knows how to guide that vessel, because that will be the director who will be in charge of guiding that vessel. Then we have the quality expert, who has to be very competent and really count on the support of the producers. Of course, the regulating councils will work for the reputation and the quality of the products, and the farmers have to be committed with complying with all the established standards and comply with the standards. If you're going to have specifications, don't be too excessive. I have had to respond with many serious issues with, for example, oils with denominations of origin, whose specifications were like poetry. They spoke about issues that were not even tangible regarding the econolectic properties of the oil. So when the certification accreditation entity steps in, who is in charge of auditing in order to guarantee consumers that things are being done as they should, and regarding the specifications, this leads to tremendous tensions. So the specifications have to be a real portrait of the organoleptic features and the characteristics of the product that we're going to work on as generation of origin. But don't go too far. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for the producers and for any council that has to then respond to the accreditation bodies. I wanted to show you a video how the regulating council works, but I think we won't have time, so I will go on. So we are doing fine with time, so if you wish to share the video with us, we do have time. So self-funding as an unavoidable objective. I have taken a picture of this denomination of origin, which was the first to be published in Spain in 1935, according to the first law on wine. This small palace, according to the director of the Jerez Sherry building, to me this was then given over to the regulating council of the Jerez wine. This is a counter label. The counter label has a double function, a double role. First of all, it expresses how funding takes place. Each counter label has a price. In the case of Turrón, it is 2 cents. They normally cost between 3 to 18, 20 euros. And the same happens with wines. A Rioja wine you can be purchased for 4 to 200 euro wines. But the label costs 2 cents, euro cents for each Turrón bar. This label has to be paid by the producer. This is a small amount, but really sometimes the producers fear that this will be very expensive, but it's not at all expensive. This counter label can provide information on the type of wine, and according to the current regulations, this has to only make reference to the regulating council. This counter label will guarantee consumers the absolute traceability throughout the entire chain. In the case of the winery or cheese and so on, if I call the council, I ask the council who produced it, what is the percentage of Manchega sheep milk included, the expiry date, and the same with any Turrón bar. So this guarantees traceability and quality. In the case of the geographical indication Jijona, we have a series of consequences resulting from the denomination of origin. Jijona is a touristic and commercial destination. As a tourist destination, well, it's not at all attractive. It wasn't, and it's not very nice. Now we tried to restore the castle, but we have a Christmas market that attracts 90,000 people during 5 days. We have a museum and the regulating council that are attractions. Tourists come, they tour the museum, they can have a photograph exhibition. We have gastronomic activities, which is called Eating Tapas in Jijona, and there's also a competition, and also an ongoing commercial activities with all the shops that sell Turrón that not only those with denomination of origin, but also those manufactured by other companies. So those resulting from a denomination of origin not only promotes the quality of a product and the capacity for exports, but also all this entire gastronomic and commercial activity resulting from a denomination of origin. Regarding promotion of geographical indications, in the case of Spain, we tried to associate this to art. There was an opportunity to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Museo del Prado. We associated denominations of origin with the products exhibited in the pictures of the Museo del Prado. So we organized several events with famous chefs. And in this case, I selected the example of Jerez wines. They have special terminology and special seals. And those that are more than 20 or 30 years old have special labels, VORS or others, which make them true treasures. And of course, much higher prices are paid for them with, of course, much higher margins for the producer. So from the denomination of origin, you can work on imaginative marketing techniques to promote the products. So this is what I wanted to share with you. I think I took up 4 more minutes. If you wish, I can share the videos with you, and otherwise this would be the end of my presentation. Yes, you can watch the Christmas fair at Jijona, more than 90,000 visitors. Commercial activity in more than 40 shops. Turrón Museum, more than 120,000 visitors every year. Regulating Council of Jijona and Alicante.
Bien.
Thank you, Federico, for your brilliant presentation. Could you minimize your screen, please? It was very interesting, not just in terms of the figures you shared, but also the videos and all that surrounds a denomination of origin or geographical indication. We have a reality in Latin America, and this is a question for the three speakers. Unfortunately, this is something that affects us all. We are doing our best to obtain recognition of a denomination of origin. However, we do not make much progress as to the creation of a regulatory council or body. In Peru, out of the 10 recognized denominations of origin, we only have one regulatory council, which is not as efficient as we would want it to be. So my question is, what are the mechanisms developed by Mexico and Spain, especially Mexico, given the similarities, the social reality, the idiosyncrasies, to create regulatory councils for denomination of origin? Was it through funding? Was it through incentives? Was it by providing advice or receiving advice from peer councils? Was it because the government sent delegations to different regions, so they become responsible until a regulatory body is created? So what incentives have you proposed? I would like to hear about that. Mexico, in the Mexican case, for example. Well, what I can tell you is that Mexico, like Peru and others, has to face many problems when creating regulatory councils. We have two very important, one is with tequila and mezcal, but there are about 17 denominations of origin from Mexico where the regulatory council had serious problems. Of course, we are talking about Veracruz coffee. There was a regulatory council for it. It was making important progress according to our regulations, but suddenly it took them some time to become economically successful. And then we got a new public administration that funded the activities, and so unfortunately this council disappeared. So in my country, we've seen serious, deep problems when creating regulatory councils. I believe that Mexico requires readjustment of its legislation in order to generate public strategies to be able to foster the creation of regulatory councils. I believe that the success cases belong to another generation. Tequila is 1974. Mezcal is 1994. Those were the days when these regulatory councils were created with success. The other denominations of origin correspond to the first 10 years of this century, and they face conflict. Unfortunately, as we've seen, this is a very important model, and European experiences inspire us, inspire the society and the territory with serious conflict in our country. Thank you, Federico. Maybe you could also consider the case of Manchego cheese. Federico, you told us that the figures are drastic if you compare Manchego cheese to other cheeses. Not that they are not important, they are very tasty, but what sort of incentive did they get? Maybe was it the region tourism that favored this difference? What did they do different with Manchego? Maybe it's history? Along the same lines, tequila is a fantastic success case, not just in Mexico, but worldwide. You did many things with tequila. Ramon Gonzalez is a fabulous general director. And in the case of Peru, I was lucky enough because Indicacio invited me to produce 2 diagnoses and evaluations. And my diagnosis was as follows. The administration, if you have a very powerful leadership, that's fine. But if that is not the case, which happens a lot in Latin America, in Costa Rica, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, the administration plays an essential role. I was telling our friends in Indicacio, if you have farmers that use the denomination of origin without being part of a regulatory council, without paying, that's a problem already. So go back to scratch. So this has to do with something that from a political point of view, it does not work. So you need to give them time, so that first you get a regulatory council with a few producers, something that is feasible, a few of them. So when those very few producers become efficient, give the others 4 or 5 years to join the group. Otherwise, they will no longer be able to use a denomination of origin. In Europe, we have a similar case, and I'm not going to give names. One denomination of origin, which is very powerful, had to call in lawyers to defend them because of that. And administrations play a very fundamental role. In the case of other denominations of origin who do not have a regulatory council, the process is the same. You need to help in the beginning to push them forward. We have attorneys, advisors, auditors, lawyers who can accompany the producers, create a regulatory council, and then the administration sets the temporary limits. Well, unfortunately, time has the upper hand, and we have to finish in a few seconds. So all the questions we have received from the participants will be sent to you, and I hope you can answer them. The presentations have led us through the importance of denominations of origin and geographical indications for the development of countries and societies. The figures shared by the 3 of you show a sustained economic growth of trade of goods that are thus protected. Each country will decide what its main representative products are, like tequila in Mexico, pisco in Peru, and many others. There are many denominations of origin that have a very wealthy potential that will contribute to the social, environmental, economic, and tourism development. So lawyers working in the field of intellectual property can contribute ideas that help in the creation of a regulatory council, which is the beginning of something else that will help economic enhancement of the region, preservation of traditions, defense of common interest, preservation of natural resources, social and tourism development. So thank you for your participation, for the information you shared. I wish we had more time to expand on these issues, but we will probably organize future webinars to talk about this. Thank you. Thank you all.
Gracias a todos, un gusto.
Sí, muchas gracias a todos.
Y ahora nos sobró tiempo. No. Chicos, creo que se acabó.
¿Ya?
De verdad que se han quedado